as the Chicago Bulls try to forge their identity heading into next season. We're going to talk about why the defense is what they need to hang their hat on and really rely on their defensive playmaker in Alex Caruso. We're going to go over Alex Caruso's defensive numbers and why it points to him being one of the best defensive playmakers in the NBA and how the Bulls have added to that with their acquisition this offseason. Plus, we're going to talk about comments from Marks Eversley during Chicago Bulls Fest. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel as you choose to do so at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the content for today. And first up, we're going to talk about why the Bulls' identity mainly needs to be a defensive one next season. We know that we have players in Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Nikola Vucevic that can absolutely get their points when needed, right? We've seen it. We know it. We can rely on it. We understand that. But the Bulls' defense needs to be their identity next season. And while a lot of Bulls fans, me included at times, talk oftenly about how the Bulls were a top 5 defensive team last season, we've already broken down the reasons of how they've kind of sacrificed part of their offensive game to get to that number. But now, when you look at Alex Caruso and his defensive numbers and how we've added 2 great point-of-attack defenders in Javon Carter and Torrey Craig, and both players that can also catch and shoot. But when you look at Alex Caruso specifically, right? Alex Caruso, the Chicago Bulls overall forced the 8th most turnovers per game last season, and one of the biggest reasons for that was Alex Caruso. When Alex Caruso was on the field, the Chicago Bulls were in the 97th percentile in steals per game. And then he also ranked 14th in the league last season in total steals, and only one of 3 players to have 98 steals and 40 blocks last season. Also, when you look at the fact that the Chicago Bulls averaged negative 6.9 points per 100 possessions when Alex Caruso was on the floor, meaning that he has the impact. This is always what I've said when it comes to Alex Caruso. And while some Bulls fans, more casual ones, like to look at just the offense or try to label a player like Alex Caruso as a luxury or anything like that, if Alex Caruso was not on the Chicago Bulls team, we would have lost easily 5 to 8 more games last season. Now, I will say with that as well, Alex Caruso needs to be more healthy. We need that from Alex Caruso for us to reach our ceiling. But when you also look at the fact of the matter is, when the Chicago Bulls are on, when he's on the court, right, and he's in a lineup, we sit in the 97th percentile in turnovers per game as far as forcing turnovers from the other team. At the end of the day, Alex Caruso, as a point-of-attack defender, is an anchor on that defensive side of the ball for the Chicago Bulls. And then when you look at the fact we've added 2 dogs now to that, in Javon Carter and Torrey Craig, hopefully going to see another leap or another step from Patrick Williams as well, him defensively. And then, hell, if we get back Ayo Dosunmu and what he was defensively, even his rookie year, then you're starting to talk about a team that defensively, even with negative defensive players in Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, and DeMar DeRozan, the Chicago Bulls can still have one of the best defenses in the NBA. And I'll go so far as to say this. For the Chicago Bulls to get 45 or more wins next season, the Bulls can't just be a top 5 defense on paper, right? They also have to be that in the half court. But the Chicago Bulls have to play one of the best and most consistent brands of defense in the NBA next season if they want to reach those heights. Now, can they do it? That is a huge question, if they can consistently do it and if we can have the health needed to do it consistently. But you look at also the growth defensively from Kobe White, right? If Dalen Terry can get in the game and play well, I think he's going to make his name for himself defensively first, right? Those type of things. Andre Drummond, can we play drum a little bit more next season, Billy Donovan? That's what we need to see from this Chicago Bulls team to really get to that next level. While, yes, this roster still has tons of questions, still holes that we need to fill, and hopefully at some point we do. But the Bulls can have and need to have almost a championship caliber defense for us to really reach heights. And that's, again, that can point to the roster construction that we need to have an almost championship level defense just to be a 5th or 6th seed, or God forbid, even just avoid the play-in. But that's almost what the Chicago Bulls need to have next season. Now, as far as talking about that roster construction, Mark Eversley was at Bulls Fest yesterday, and he had a couple of interesting quotes. One of the biggest ones that you guys are going to see is that he said the fact that they don't feel like they are that far away, that they're that far off from contending. And so, a lot of Bulls fans hear that, are going to hear that and think, hey, man, how tone deaf are you, right? And I do think that the Bulls have a solid foundation. They need to better support that foundation, and I think personally, they need a better coach to get the most out of that. But when you look at, he's very confident in Kobe White, having this to say. Kobe White had, I thought, a terrific year last year. I think the growth he's shown over the last 3 years has been second to nobody on the roster. I think his ability to shoot, and he's much more comfortable handling now, and he doesn't get pressured pressured or panic anymore. He's found his voice in the locker room. He's become a quiet leader. We've seen growth and development from him, and that's why it's critical to bring him back. Kobe White, and I know a lot of Bulls fans go back and forth on if Kobe White's going to be the starter or not. You guys know I'm not going to beat a dead horse again. You guys kind of know my thoughts when it comes to that. I think Kobe is going to be you get the most out of him, bringing him off the bench, specifically when you have DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine on your team. But Kobe is going to have a huge role on this team regardless. And I think when you the confidence that he has in Kobe is warranted. I think he's earned that with his play last season. But we got to see that. How are you now going to kind of step that up a little bit? How are you going to refine what you showed us last year and be a little bit more of a consistent scorer as well? That's what we need to see from Kobe White heading into next season, and hopefully that we do. But Mark Eversley and his confidence in this Bulls roster, and overall, I do think that there is a lot of quiet confidence from this Bulls team and certain fans around it. I'm more optimistic as far as the Bulls' chances this year. I like a lot of what they did this offseason, but when it comes down to it, it needs to happen on the basketball court. And I think going into the next season for the Chicago Bulls, a couple of things are important. Health, relative health. You're going to have players that are dinged up. You're going to have players that sit some games, but having relative health throughout most the big players on this roster, right? I think because still, unfortunately, by the way that this roster is built, an injury to Andre Drummond, almost irreplaceable. Injury to Nikola Vucevic, irreplaceable, right? We have a little bit more depth on the wing, but even then, you're not having anybody, and you're not going to have somebody off your bench that can just replace the production of a Zach LaVine or DeMar DeRozan. But I think we have some depth there that we can kind of stay afloat a little bit, right? We would have to change from a team that scores a lot to a team that just stops the other team from scoring and allows our scores to go off a little bit. But when it comes down to it, it really brings home the fact that we don't have Kobe White is a player, and I've seen people compare him. Oh, he can be a Jamal Murray type. You know why Jamal Murray is so impactful and effective? Because they play from the inside out, right? They have a big man that they allow to distribute and really become the focal point, and he's able to do some things. You couldn't use Nikola Vucevic in a similar fashion in a way, right? He's not a Jokic clone. He can't do the things that Jokic can do, but he's a good enough passer to where you can do that. Billy Donovan isn't going to use him that way. He's just not going to, not consistently enough. And so because of that, I think we need to see that growth from Kobe and how he can manage coming off the bench. But overall, we need better balance overall in this team, right? And so, the confidence that they had, the fact that they've improved in the margins quite considerably in those margin areas, we'll see ultimately what they have. A GM should be confident in their team, but we also need you to be realistic and real with where this team sits so you can call, make an audible, do some different acquisitions if needed. And the Bulls, as we've said a lot, they have more than enough assets if they choose to make a move this trade deadline or whatever else to improve the team. But we got to see where this team is going to be. But all right, enough of me talking. Let's go ahead and get into the voicemails for today. It is Sunday. That means it's Mailbag Day. This one's from Mingo.
Hey, what up, Hayes? This is Big Uncle Mingo, man. Hey, what you think we got to do, man, to get back a Christmas game? Because I'm looking at the schedule. I don't really care about the West Coast, but, you got Nuggets and Warriors, Suns and Mavs. The L.A. and Boston game, that's trash, man. Don't nobody even want to see L.A. no more. But I know we can't take the place of Boston. But them last two games, New York and Bucks, Heat and Philly, man, we could take the place of New York. Even the Heat, man, even though they had a good run in the playoffs, though. But, man, come on, man. We could take the place of the Knicks and Heat. So what you think we got to do, man, to get back into those Christmas games? All right, holler at me.
What do the Bulls have to do to get a Christmas Day win? That's just what it comes. They have to be more consistent. That doesn't mean they have to be this 50, 55 win team to get a Christmas Day game. It just means that they have to have a sustained level of play and have better showings on national TV than what they've had the last couple of years, right? That's what the Bulls need to do. They need to be a more consistent team. They need to become one of those teams that at least is like, hey, they don't have a lot of nationally televised games, but if you're going to get league pass, one of the teams to watch is the Chicago Bulls, right? They need to be that type of team to get a Christmas Day game. I miss Bulls Christmas Day games, man. It almost felt like for a while there, you just knew the Bulls were going to be televised on Christmas every year, and we haven't had that now for a while. So I would love to see the Bulls get another Christmas Day game. I think also you have to have a player that is much watched. You have to have a player that's having the type of season or trajectory that is like, hey, we got to put this guy on TV because, listen, the world wants to watch him. We don't really have that, and we haven't had that in a while. So, those are the type of things that I think the Bulls need to have, and I hope we can get a Christmas Day game next season. I guess it's always next year, but thanks for sending that voicemail, Mingo. Let's get into this next one. This one's from Shay.
What's up, Hayes? How you doing? Look, man, I know a lot of people are having this debate about, who should start at point guard, Ayo, Kobe White, or Javon Carter. Look, here are my reasons why Javon Carter should start over everybody. One, because we don't really have any other scorers off of the bench when you think about it. All we have is good defenders and three-point shooting. Two, when you think about it, Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan like to drive, and Vucevic is the inside presence. So you're going to need somebody that can shoot. Patrick Williams and Javon Carter are those two people. So we don't necessarily need another scorer in that starting lineup. Three, Javon Carter, I hate to say it, makes up for a lot of Zach LaVine's weaknesses. I know what people are going to say, Ayo does too, and Kobe improved on defense. Yes, that's true, but Kobe White is not necessarily the defensive stopper. You need somebody next to Zach LaVine that could take the heavy load of guarding the opposite team's best scorer, and I think Javon Carter along with Patrick Williams does that. And I feel, what I'm saying? So those are just my three reasons, because I feel like he does cover up a lot for Zach LaVine, just like Patrick Williams covers up a lot for DeMar DeRozan and Vucevic. And I feel that, we kind of need another catch-and-shoot player. And when you really start to think about it, Javon Carter, even though he hasn't had many opportunities in the teams that he's been on, he is a pretty good playmaker from what I've seen from him in college. I'm just saying. Anyway, tell me what you think. Peace.
I listen, not that I agree with all the points that you made, but I do agree that Javon Carter makes the most sense starting. Not everybody, but a lot of Bulls fans, they just think, Kobe White can score. He can potentially be a 15, 20-point scorer. Put him in the starting lineup. That's not how it works, right? You have to balance. How you get your points is almost as important as your ability to score. And the way that Kobe White gets his points, it becomes easier for him to do that coming off the bench. Now, also, Kobe White defensively. Now, here's to say, if Kobe White comes into training camp, and I do think that Billy Donovan is going to use the preseason to start different players at the point guard, and he shows a renewed ability to kind of pick his spots with this starting lineup, then you start him. If he earns it, you start him. But with what I've seen and how Kobe White typically plays the game, his strengths are maximized by not being out there with three other ball-dominant players out there all at the same time. He can play with Zach. He can play with DeMar. He can play with Vooch. He can probably play with a combination of two out of those three. But when you get all three of them in, and then with a player like Kobe, who's best when he has the ball in his hands, that's where things start getting a little bit more difficult. And that's what, people like to build 2K teams. Like, throwing Kobe White in the starting lineup is great on 2K. That's going to be an amazing lineup on 2K. But when it comes to actual basketball and the game and how it's played, when you have a player like a Javon Carter who gets his shots, right, can do catch and shoot, is a great defender, isn't the best facilitator, hasn't at least shown that at the NBA level, right? But with those strengths, it helps maximize the way that Billy Donovan has typically used the core three players. That's my thought. You guys can let me know what you think down below. All right, let's get into this next one. This one's from Casual Kelder with another casual take.
I'm going to leave you another message there, Hayes, because I know you love him. Talking about the AK losing trust of the fan base. He's deserved to lose the trust, if you ask me. See, what I think he's done is built a team, 45, 50 win ceiling, and traded off many draft assets to get it. That was mistake number one. Mistake two was centering it all around Zach LaVine. I don't think he was that guy that you want to build your entire team around ever. I think if he had to tear it down, LaVine should have been gone too. Probably could have got more back for him anyway. Three, Lonzo Ball. I know he's hurt. say it was a mistake. He's always been hurt. And then we've talked about his drafting. I do like what he did this off season, but to get his trust back, I mean, he's going to have to show more than just this year. He's going to have to get a future. What do you think about that? Bye.
All right, so everybody who says this, the bullshit in the boot, that's the player they like. That is one of, and I'm sorry, Kelder, until you can actually come up with a basketball thought, I may have to stop playing your voice because I love you, dude. And you're a great fantasy mind. Y'all go support Kelder with what he does in fantasy sports. But when it comes to actually watching the game of basketball, you have so much left to learn, bro, to understand the game of basketball. When you just say, oh, they shouldn't have built around somebody. Oh, they should have sent them away because you can't build around. Okay, then you don't even have that to build around. Building around Zach LaVine isn't necessarily saying that this is the player that you think is going to be the number one on your championship team. It's about building a roster because that is a more modern day basketball roster. You can build around the skill set of Zach LaVine, and if you do end up moving him and getting a better player, it's plug and play at that point in time. That's what that meant. Now, as far as AK losing the Bulls fan base because he gave up a first round picks to build a team that has maybe a 50, 45, 50 win ceiling, listen, the Bulls gave up tons of first-round picks, and that is detrimental, especially when you're not also developing the young players that you have on your team, and that is why the Bulls sit in such a dire place at times. So, yeah, it's a lot of negative right now with this team as far as the way that the roster ended up going. Now, as far as Lonzo Ball, listen, every player has ding. Now, Lonzo did have huge injury concerns, but when he was here on the court, it absolutely worked and was rocking and rolling. And when you look at what the deal the Bulls gave him, $20 million in the modern NBA and where it's going, isn't a huge contract at all. They took a swing and they missed, right? It missed because Alonzo's health didn't keep up. But I tell you what, there wasn't really many other players at that point in time they could have put that money on. And you hope for health, right? Unfortunately, we didn't get it, and it does end up now being a deal that did not work out in the Chicago Bulls' favor. But all right, let's move into the last one for today. This one's actually a text message. This one's from Julian. He says this. Hey, it's Julian from Seattle. I want to ask you, do you think a Seattle team will ever be in the NBA again? And do you think we should find a new head coach for this Bulls team? In my opinion, I don't want Billy on this team. I don't think he uses the roster to his full abilities. I really think this roster would be better without him. P.S. Love the show. I'm a huge fan of the podcast. Well, hey, Julian, thank you for that. Here's what I say. There will absolutely be another team in Seattle before it's all said and done. I don't know when. I'm not going to say even with the next expansion. But I will say that the city of Seattle deserves a team, and I think they're going to get one eventually. Now, as far as Billy Donovan, I agree. I don't think Billy is the right coach to get the most out of this roster. Again, like I always say, Billy isn't a bad coach, but not being a bad coach doesn't make you a good coach for this team either, right? And that's where we sit right now. The lineups, the adjustments, the not using players to the best of their abilities, all those things is true. And the people that actually watch the Chicago Bulls team go, have seen that and understand that, and that is why you see people so upset with the fact that Billy Donovan was giving the extension that he was given. So, but I'm also a realist. I do think that Billy, now that he's in with the Reinsdorfs, he's going to be here for quite a while, and we'll see, man. We'll see. I don't even know what to say on that one, man. But hey, it is what it is. Let me know what you guys think down below. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central. Make sure you're following the show at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. You can also send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the Mailbag episode, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related because of you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.